Hey Blenders, it's Sean and Kevin and Jake, and we are introducing a very special bonus episode of ReelBlend. You guys are getting two very cool things coming your way this week as we get it ready for the Thanksgiving holiday here in America. It is an interview that we've been sort of teasing on social media, and now we can go full bore with it. It's Hans Zimmer. Zimmer is joining the show to talk Dune and his career. And Kev, for me, this is like a top three. Especially having listened back to it. Where are you putting this?
Well, I mean, as you'll hear in the interview, there are moments that are so specific to what we love that I can't explain. I don't want to give it away or spoil it, but there are some special things in this interview. All three of us came at it from completely different angles and different loves of different scores that they have that he's done. But overall, it was almost like euphoric. Like it was hard. It's hard to explain what that felt like to talk to him, especially about the movies we discussed, for sure.
Jakey, we're gonna dive into it on the other side and get to the people talking about it. But where would you put this Zimmer one in a top ReelBlends?
If I'm able to Kill Bill all of the Quentin Tarantino volumes that we've done and just consider them one, then I'm calling Zimmer two.
Wow! All right, see, now that's high praise, and so we can't wait any longer. We're gonna throw it to the ReelBlend interview. I can't even say it. It's so unbelievable. The ReelBlend interview with the great, legendary composer Hans Zimmer. Here you go, guys. Dive in.
There's no way you can get geeky and nerdy enough. I mean, I am...
Challenge accepted, sir.
We're going to try our best.
Exactly. I am throwing down the gauntlet of geek.
All right. We're really excited. So about a month or so ago, we did the press junket and interviewed Denis for the film. And I asked Denis about the first time he heard Paul's Dream, the theme, the score, and the music for this movie. And he told me this amazing story about getting on Zoom with you and you showing him the piece of music. And he said he started to cry while he was listening to it. And I wanted to ask you just what your remembrance of that moment was. What's it like to actually present your music to a filmmaker like that and to see Denis Villeneuve cry hearing it? What does that mean?
No, really good point. I have learned a long time ago never to look at the director when he listens to my piece of music for the first time, just in case there's a slight sort of shadow of disgust and disdain, in his face. I mean, look, it goes back to like Chris Nolan in Interstellar. It's like Chris asked me to write this piece of music before he'd even written a script. And I sort of played it to him without looking at him. I mean, it's in this. I mean, you can see the couch behind me. He was sitting on the couch, So I was not facing him. And I got to the end of it and I said, well, what do you think? And he just sort of leaning back and goes, suppose I better make the movie. And I'm going, what is the movie? Because he never told me what it was going to be about. But with Denis, no, I mean, it's like I'm a good enough friend not to notice if he's crying. I just knew that. Let me answer the question slightly differently. I was the first person Denis asked about joining him on Dune, or Dune, as we say. And the way he did it was he very quietly said to me, have I ever heard of a book called Dune? And I sort of went, wow, as a teenager, I reread it actually really quite recently by sheer coincidence. And I've never seen the David Lynch version. I've never seen the television series because I made this movie in my head when I was 13 or 14 or whatever, and I didn't want it to be blunted. I didn't want to lose that movie I had made. But there goes the dog, Alejandro. God, can't you even keep your dog at? No. I just blame Alejandro for everything. He's used to it. By the way, there are quite a few of my scores that have dog noises on them. It's like that dog is barking in the middle of a take, but it's a great take. So this is all good. But anyway, so more how Alejandro, more how Denis was asking, I realized, I don't know, sometimes you just get that sort of vibe, that he was sort of making the same movie as I was making. And so here we are talking about, I suppose, the filmmaking process. But what was very atypical is that our discussions were very atypical, because we both seemed to share the same vision about things. So we could go, we would, he'd start a sentence, and I would finish it about an idea, right? Or I'd start something about an idea and he would finish it. And so it wasn't like a discussion. It wasn't like, what would happen if? It was never that. It was always a foregone conclusion that I was already buying into the idea and he was already buying into the idea. And the other thing which I think was very atypical is we all have our teenage dreams that in one way or the other usually never get fulfilled, never get made, whatever, the crazy fucking movie you drew out on a napkin or something, the crazy idea you had, and it never gets done. But then occasionally some of them get done. Who doesn't want to do a gladiator movie, or who doesn't want to do Interstellar or something like this, just as an example. But you do it, you look at it, you look at your childhood imaginations, and you sort of run it through that filter of now being grown up and having experienced all this stuff and doing all that. And I don't think that's what Denis and I did. I think what happened, and I think it helped that the two of us were so aligned somehow. And actually, it wasn't just the two of us. I think everybody was so aligned that we just reverted back to being teenagers. And we made this movie with the sort of imagination, a reckless imagination that only teenage, I'm going, Denis, there's this guy playing the bagpipes. What's this? And of course it makes perfect sense, that you need somebody to herald the arrival on this planet, and what better than this ancient metaphor, which people have given us a lot of shit about it, but that's just people who don't know their history. Because if you look at, for instance, if you look at the history of bagpipes, it's like they're all over, like they're all over the Middle East. They go so way back in history. So if it goes thousands of years back in history, why can't it go 10,000 years into the future and be relevant? Be relevant? Because one of the things that was really important for me was to not make it an orchestral, a Western orchestral, Western orchestra, a European romantic orchestra score. I wanted to go and make sounds that you'd never heard before. I wanted to go and manipulate things and make that thing that I heard as a 13-year-old in my head. Did that answer your question?
Wow. No, that's
yes.
awesome.
Beautiful answer. Hans, I'm gonna take that topic and go the opposite direction with it. And there's this great story, and I really hope it's true, of the very first time John Williams ever let Steven Spielberg listen to the Jaws score. And Spielberg reportedly turned around and went, like, seriously, this is it? This is what you wrote? Have you ever had an experience where you gave your work to a director and maybe the reaction wasn't quite what you thought it would, like maybe the director?
Always. Not with Denis, not with Christopher Nolan, but let's not name directors, but let's just go with the basic what happens part. Every director, every film studio, we gotta get really geeky here, right? Okay, yeah, so let's just for a moment remind ourselves that it's called show business and not show friends, right? Somewhere along the way, as you start getting into a project, somebody at the film studio will whisper to you that this thing is really, really expensive, and it's all resting on your shoulders because you're the last. You're basically the last voice that comes on board, and the musicians are the last actors that get added to it. And at the same time, they're saying to you, and the director is saying to you, we want something new. We want something that, we want something new. Something that nobody's heard before. So you do something new. And the first reaction you get is that they're astonished and they're a little bit scared, and it's all a bit too new. Well, we didn't know it was going to be this new or whatever, because really what we meant was whatever that last thing that was a hit was, can't you do Gladiator again? Can't you do Batman again? Can't you do Interstellar again, right? Can't you do Journey to the Line from Thin Red Line one more time? Listen, I'm sorry. Nobody went to see the movie. The movie is not a huge success, but weirdly, that music was temped into 1 million movies.
Yep.
And became became a sort of a template for a style of film composing or film music, that still follows me around. So what happens is the first reaction usually is one of trepidation and fear and, oh my God, we didn't know, this is scaring us. This is not at all what we thought. And then if you've done enough movies and you can say to them, I might be totally wrong, and music is totally indefensible because there's no way I can go and tell you why you should like this piece. You either like it or you don't, right? But I can say to you, give it a little time, give it a week or so, or 2 weeks, or however long it takes, and then it's not quite as new anymore, and you suddenly and suddenly it's part of it fits into the conversation better. I mean, I literally had that with Terry Malick on Thin Red Line. I wasn't going to mention directors, but I will. And I love Terry, so it's okay to I say this lovingly. I'd written this piece, which I thought was okay. I never think my stuff is great. I just think it's, we just got away with it. But so I'm playing him this thing, and he's going, "Oh no, Hans! Oh no, that's not a memorable tune. Nobody can remember. And that's not film score." And then about a month later, it's like 11 o'clock at night, and Terry's on the phone, and he's in the car, and he's singing me something. He's going, "What is this?" And I'm going, "I don't know." And then I'm going, "Oh yes, I do know what that is. That's the tune you said nobody could remember." And he goes, "Oh, it's actually quite good. Maybe we should use it." And that basically became Sean Penn's tune throughout the movie. So it's a complicated thing because you have the responsibility on your shoulders of, you don't want to go and ruin the movie. I was thinking about it. Look, Gladiator was really tough because it wasn't tough. It was great fun. Ridley and I had a great time, and we were in total agreement on everything. But there were some people who just absolutely couldn't get the idea of the Lisa Gerard's voice, and and what I do in those cases, and this is of course the big cheat after you've had a few hit movies, you can do this. You say, okay, before you throw this idea out, I want to put it in front of people. I want to have a preview, and I want to see how people react to it, because it's totally different. A bunch of scared executives sitting there, going, "Oh my God, we're going to lose so much money," as opposed to an audience whose only job is it an experience or is it not an experience? And if it's an experience, is it an experience where we want to have? So,
Lisa
Gerard survived that movie quite successfully. I think.
Yes, she did. Yes.
Yeah.
Hans, I want to switch to this conversation because, and especially with Dune and its availability on HBO Max. Well, hold on. I'm getting at something. We had this conversation about streaming at home, and quite often the complaint is you hear from everybody, well, your screen at home isn't big enough. The screen is too small. But the one aspect that we don't talk about is the fact that, people don't have the right sound system to appreciate the amount of work that goes into your score on something like this. So I wanted to get your opinion about streaming at home and why you think maybe in Dune in particular, if somebody goes to see Dune, they're not getting the full impact of the work that you're putting into the score.
Well, actually, all right. Look, when we talk about sound, and that's going to be like a half a sentence conversation. Yes, I got into this game partly because I like big speakers, right? Mm-hmm. I like things to be punchy and bolty and big and weirdly, the bigger the speakers, etc., and the bigger the sound system, the quieter you can be as well, the more subtle you can be, the more nuanced you can be. So there's that. But there's another thing, and this really does have to do with the size of the screen. And the trade-off, that one of the losers is music. If you look at a normal television, if you look at a shot on a normal television screen, your eye can take in the whole shot very, very quickly, wander across the screen very, very fast. If you go into a big IMAX theater or just any old big theater, it takes you much longer to take in what's going on in that shot. So that affects how the film is being edited, which affects the rhythm of the music. So on a television screen, shots might seem like they're unnaturally long, while when you look at it in the cinema, they're just the right length.
Oh, right.
And so, do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's how you, because your eye has to do far more, your eye has to wander across. It takes time to take in a shot on a big screen, which is part of the sort of magic. I mean, a single shot, especially the way Denis shoots film, and especially the way Joe Walker edits, because Joe Walker was a composer, so before he was an editor. So and I've been working with Joe since 1988. So we've had these conversations. I mean, there is a way where a single shot, if you let your eye wander into the details, can tell you a whole story. So right. so there's the story within the shot, and then there's the story that happens as the film moves on, right? Which is completely disturbed by changing the aspect ratio, the format, and the size of it. And I'm saying that as somebody who loves watching things on his iPad, and I love television, and I think we live in a time of extraordinary craftsmanship and extraordinary television at the moment. But I bet you I know I can feel it. I mean, if the editor is aware of it or not, he knows which medium he's working for. We're shooting this in IMAX, so therefore we are going to go and take our time over the shots. Hang on, we're doing this because it's just going to be Netflix or HBO. So it's not one is better than the other. It's going to be different.
It can be different.
And I will treat the music differently. I mean, I will not. We had that on Dark Knight. We were, like everybody's holy grail is somehow let's put the soundtrack out on vinyl. Vinyl. The good old days when my dog used to walk across the records and scratch the shit out. But no, it sounded great, other than the scratches. So we were sending the Dark Knight off to be mastered for vinyl, and they kept sending it back and saying there's a 20-second silence in this, and we kept listening, going, no, there isn't, sending it back. And finally we figured out it's basically the bass the bass just doesn't. The cutting head couldn't handle the bass. So yes, there's still people who are saying these days, "Wow, it's really interesting. In the Dark Knight on the vinyl release, there's a 20-second gap." Well, actually, there isn't a 20-second gap. We finally managed to get it onto the disc, but your speakers can't handle it. You just can't hear it, right? Wow. So knowing that, I would write differently. But what I feel my sort of, especially with a Denis or with a Christopher Nolan. I mean, remember, I'm working with two of the filmmakers that are the most vocal about, cinema, and we can get into why they're being that vocal about cinema, which is it's not a technical discussion at all. But I would approach things slightly differently if it wasn't for working with these filmmakers. If it was, we just did Army of Thieves for Netflix,
yeah, sure,
right?
Yeah, great score, really, Mazzaro, yeah,
right. Steve, it's great fun. But we knew the medium we were working for. So I promise you can hear every bass note. There isn't like, and it doesn't go behind your head and stuff like that. It just sits really well up front, the way it's supposed to when you're watching something on television. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to have spent $10 million kitting out your home,
Yeah. Hans, there's a moment that I'll never forget. It's the moment cinematic immersion changed for me. And I saw The Dark Knight in 70 millimeter IMAX, 1:3 aspect ratio, and hearing Nolan use your score as a leading character it just changed everything for me. And I felt the same way watching Dune. I was able to see Dune the other day in 1:3 IMAX at an Air and Space Museum, and hearing your score pump through the speakers was incredible to me. So it's interesting to me because over the years you've been so synonymous with Nolan for over a decade. And I have an Interstellar tattoo. It's my favorite movie he's ever made. So I wanted to ask you, I know you decided to do Dune over Tenet, and you've talked about the idea of doing Dune because it was a special book for you and you wanted to do it that way. But when you take on Dune and don't do Tenet, do you call Christopher Nolan? Do you tell him hey, I'm going to do this? What's that conversation like? Because you worked with him for so long and you're going to go off and work with Denis. I'm just wondering what that conversation is like with Nolan. Not
great.
Was he a little upset?
No. He was. Look, there's another part to it as well, which people keep missing out on. I went on tour, and I suddenly got really. I saw you. I suddenly got really interested in this thing that I never thought I'd do, and here I was 60 odd years old going, whoa, this is fun. I like this. I like.
You were a rock star. You were literally a rock star.
I saw you out Chicago. It was amazing. Yeah.
Okay. So Chris realized that, and he realized that, that's where my focus was at that moment. And then the thing that really pulled me back into the movies was Denis, just by saying that word, Dune, And it was and as I said, I was back to being 13, and I was back to before my career started. And it was like, whoa, all these ideas were rushing through my head. But you started what you were saying with something really interesting, which is the way Chris and Denis use music, like the way the Joker theme, which is not a theme, it's like
that D note.
Yeah, it's the tiniest motif. But you'd see a shot of an empty city, and you just hear it, and you knew he was there, right? And it could be really quiet. And with like one of the problems with Dune is that the book is so full of internal monologue, and one of the things I was trying to do is, music is it's its own language, but it's not a language where, you can easily say duck or whatever. You can't be specific about it. I love this Bernstein thing, where he's describing Beethoven's Pastoral, and he's I think he's just so sick and tired of people misunderstanding what Beethoven meant by the Pastoral Symphony. And it's going, he wasn't writing about milkmaids and cows, you know. So that's not what music does. But I still wanted to sort of figure out of how to connect with the acting that the actors were doing and give you a sense that there was an internal monologue going on beyond the words that they were saying. So I think it sort of works. I think you realize there is sometimes more being said than you can actually hear, you know, from the actors.
Hans, because you have such a vast filmography, it's yielded so many different emotional reactions whenever I've listened to your music attached to the films. I get emotional whenever I watch Gladiator, whenever the Wonder Woman, score comes on. If I'm walking down the street, I have a pep in my step. I'm sort of curious what kind of emotional reaction you have listening to your own music. Are you able to separate yourself enough, or do you know it too well?
I don't. I look. I only listen to it when it's time to get going for the live shows, you know, and then it's a different thing because I get the whole band around me again. My problem has always been stereo. Stereo is. I mean, I don't know. You can't quite see it. I mean, if the camera was slightly different, you'd see that I am I am totally surrounded by speakers. I am, my world is 360, and so is your world. The real world is sound all around, immersive. You're totally in it, and stereo is just this thing up front. And so when I listen back to my soundtracks and that, on a CD or something, you're robbing me of, what is it that, I like at least 3/4 of what there is, what the sonic world is. Yeah. So it feels a bit of a letdown, Plus the other thing is, I always think I could have done it better, so. Look,
can we tell you that you can't?
I'll give you a perfect example of Zimmer stupidity. We're going to be playing Coachella, and the first thing I say to the band is, okay, fine, we got an hour. It's not going to be the whole set, so Lion King's gone, right? And they're also going, yeah, okay. And then finally, Niall Marr, Johnny Marr's son, who's like 21, he's going, Hans, stop, get over yourself. That's the music of my youth. That's how I grew up. You can't take that out. I'm going, but it's a kid's movie. And he's going, but the music isn't a kid's movie. The music is part of my life. And I have to recognize and respect that it's not my music. It's everybody's music, and it's and the whole thing of going out, and playing live. I mean, that was Johnny Marr going, listen, you can't hide behind a screen for the rest of your life. You got to look people in the eye eventually.
Wow.
First off, as a tremendous Smiths fan, I want to thank you so much for collaborating with Johnny Marr as much as you can. Sometimes we don't hear these guitarists anymore, and he's such a genius. So I'm so thrilled that you two work together.
Well, hang on. You know the Bond thing?
Yeah. Yes.
It became. I've been friends with Barbara Broccoli for a long time, and I never thought I would do a Bond movie. And the order of events went something like this. Barbara phones and said, do you want to do a Bond movie? I said, hang on a second. I phoned Johnny. I went, what's the only piece of guitar that actually is, you can validate in a movie score? And he goes, Bond. I'm going, do you want to do it? He goes, yeah, absolutely. I'm going, all right, we're on. So I wouldn't have done it had he not done it.
Totally understandable. Okay, last one. We're going to wrap you up on this because to me, two of my absolute favorite scores of yours are for Man of Steel with Zack Snyder and The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Two iconic themes for characters that had signature songs prior to them, whether by John Williams, Danny Elfman. And so when you tackle a character that has an existing piece of music associated with them, what is your choice between trying to do any kind of homage to what exists versus deconstructing completely and coming up with something new?
Well, to be really honest, but hang on. Let's talk about Man of Steel, because it's sort of probably the more interesting one to talk about, because I love the John Williams one. I think it's so great.
It's my favorite piece of music. John Williams'
Superman is. So imagine somebody comes along and says, "Go and beat this." I did have an idea. I had a really solid idea of what I wanted to do, so, intellectually and conceptually, but I wasn't touching the keyboard. And finally, Zach said, "I'm coming down on Tuesday." I'm going, "Well, I haven't got anything." This was like months in, I don't know anything. And he came down, and I said, "Look, I'm so overwhelmed just by the by thinking about what John did and the brilliance of that. I mean, I have an idea, but it's so the opposite to what John did." And Zach said something which on the surface seems really callous, but it was so right. He said, "Come on, Hans, it's only a movie. You've done loads of movies." And I thought, he's right. It's only a movie. So then I said to him, "Okay, so this is my idea. This is where it's very, very different. I think what Superman really wants to do is he wants to become human. The whole Kansas thing. I mean, all that stuff. So I want to go and use an old piano, like in and I just want to write something so simple and so human and so unglamorous. I mean, part of the trick of Superman in any of those movies was always you always put the name into the tune, da da da, Superman. So I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do the opposite. So I wanted to do something which was just little piano, the simplest sort of folky chords, and start there and let him. Let him become human. He won't become human, but let him have that dream and constantly play with that idea of that dream. So that was really that idea. So plus it felt really important to not. What were my choices? To do bad John Williams? It's like it's like. I had a job at DreamWorks when DreamWorks first started for years as the head of music. And I took it because I thought there are millions of unheard voices out there, great original composers that never get a chance to be heard. So I'm going to listen to all of them, right? And every day I was getting tapes where somebody was basically writing in the style of John Williams. And I'm thinking, this is a company that belongs to Steven Spielberg, and John Williams' office is just down the hall. I mean, 20 steps from me. And if Steven Spielberg wants John Williams, he's going to just walk over there, as opposed to pick up your tape where you're sounding sort of like John Williams. So what's the point? Film music isn't about being a fan of other film composers. It's about being a fan of the story and being a fan of film. Yes, I am a huge Morricone fan. Yes, I'm a huge Williams fan. The last thing I'm going to do is listen to those two guys before I start on a film. Right. I mean, I try to clear my mind of everything. Yeah.
Hans, I wish we had hours more with you because we're scratching the surface, but we know you have other things to do. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining the ReelBlend podcast. It was a pleasure. So welcome. No, it's and great. Thank you for your questions. No, it's like it's great talking to guys who love who
we filmmakers have this secret fear that however hard we work, we're not giving you an experience, right? And sometimes we don't, and we fail. But it's really good to talk to a bunch of guys who are actually investing their time in validating and recognizing that they've had an experience that we've given them. That we're not, that our life isn't just a waste of time. And that at the end of the day, it's not show business, but show friends.
Absolutely. Oh, beautifully put. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Have
sir.
a great day.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Take care. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Welcome back, everybody. It's Jake and Kevin and Sean here to break down the Hans Zimmer interview. And so going back to re-listen to it recently before we were able to post, I cannot believe how, and this is what to be fair, I haven't listened to a ton of Hans Zimmer lengthy interviews. So maybe he's like this all the time, but I was blown away by how conversational he was, like instantly.
Like a buddy.
Yes, but why? How come he was like that, from the get-go?
Like the turn from I'm not going to give any names to okay, I'll give you some names. It sounds like if all of us were sitting around a round table at a bar having a beer, that's exactly how you would say that in that scenario.
Right.
But not a podcast interview.
Also, right before the interview started, because I've always called him Hans Zimmer. And apparently people call him Hans, and then so I think that's literally how you say it is Hans Zimmer. So that's why we're saying it that way. But he said it's fine, Hans, whatever you want to say. But it's I've been saying Hans Zimmer for so long. It was so strange saying Hans. Like it felt also weird.
Like you said, going into the interview, like he brings up so many things that we have just discussed on the show that it almost feels like he listens, right? But they're things that are natural to him. He was like, I was talking to Chris about a new score he wanted me to write, and it ended up being Interstellar. And I look right at Kevin, like, is Kevin going to be okay with this?
No, I blacked out at that point. I don't even remember. I don't remember the interview from the moment he said.
Kevin,
Chris
you don't
Nolan.
remember? The interview went 3 hours. You were blacked out for 2:45 of it.
When he pointed to his couch, and people who are listening to this, there's a video component to this, obviously.
Yes.
He's sitting in a studio, and he specifically points out the couch that Christopher Nolan sat on when Zimmer showed him the Interstellar score for the first time, because generally speaking, scores are written after or during production, but Nolan wanted to hear the music first, just based on the themes, not even the story or anything like that, and just to know the history of that Nolan sat there. And Zimmer showed it to him, and then what did Zimmer say? He puts his head down like this.
Well, it was Jake had that terrific quote. Jake asked, what happens when you play a score for a director and they don't like it, kind of thing. Does that ever happen? And if someone is conceited or they think that they're high and mighty, they would say that never happens. And the reason why I love Zimmer is because he's just it happens all the time, every single time.
I mean, statistically, when you've scored the number of scores that he has,
sure.
It's impossible. There's a reason that if you bat 300 in baseball, you're in the Hall of Fame. You go up to home plate enough, you can't be expected to get on base or knock it out of the park. You just can't.
Right.
It's unfair. I wonder though, guys, if you could imagine. So he was watching us on this monitor, and so he saw the faces of 3 grown men, just gawking at him. But the moment that he pointed to his couch behind him, imagine on that monitor, all 3 of us just leaned forward.
Yeah.
And just look, just imagine how that had to be for him, just the 3 of us just peering into his home.
One of my favorite, producer Gabe here, but I don't know if I've officially been introduced.
Hi Gabe, how are you? Yes.
For the uninitiated.
Producer Gabe.
One of my favorite moments, which I think made the edit, I'll have to check. I'm finishing the edit after this. I'll have to double check. Definitely check out the video, because the times when you see the guys' reactions are worth it. And there's one where Hans is telling a story, and in the middle of it, he goes, well, let's just talk about The Dark Knight for a second. And Sean almost faints. You see Sean he's like, yeah, go ahead, talk about The Dark Knight.
The Dark Knight.
Please.
That little movie.
Well, that's when he was, I think, might have been a different story, but he was discussing everybody wanted to snatch up vinyl. But vinyl couldn't hold the bass note that he worked into the thing.
God.
So he's saying everyone's complaining that there's a 20-second gap, and we're listening to it back and saying, no, there's not a gap. It's this bass note. So should have asked him about the Inception The Inception.
It's just a blank vinyl.
And then of course my favorite has to be, because I was fishing for that Amazing Spider-Man 2 quote, and I said, "You got to do Amazing Spider-Man 2 and Batman," and he goes, "So how about we just talk about Batman?" Because that's the one. That's the one that went well.
It was Man of Steel.
Man of Steel. Yes, that's right. It was Man of Steel. Yes.
I mean, to think about the movies that he's composed, it's like it's unbelievable. It's almost, and like I was thankful we got to cover a good majority of his career in 30 minutes. Like it
Right,
was
yeah.
that's not easy to do, and I give him the credit for like doing all that, because he was the one who was jumping around for us, kind of. I mean, he was the one that was taking us down the paths of the different movies and everything, which was really cool, because we were talking to him for Dune, but he was able to like use his career to explain things. And like one of the things that we didn't get to in the interview, which I do want to mention, is a really cool featurette. I think it's on HBO Max, or you can just look it up online. On YouTube, about the score. They created new instruments for this Dune score, and like people had to learn to play new instruments for this score. It is just outstanding, and his Dune score is one of the best of his career.
To talk more specifically about some of his answers while we're here, I love Man of Steel, and I've loved Man of Steel since day one. It's a masterpiece. I think we've discussed this on the show several times.
Yeah,
but his explanation about the kernel of an idea that he had for the theme of sort of like holding on to the idea of him wanting to be human and wanting to become human, and the theme sort of reflecting his sort of journey and hope, ironically enough, of becoming human, is just such a great. It's one of those quotes where you get a really firm understanding of how the job works. Like when we talk about composers in particular, when we talk about cinematographers, it's kind of very obvious what they're doing. When we talk about directors, it seems kind of obvious what they're doing. Everyone has kind of an idea. And a composer, I think a lot of people just write off as like they write music.
Yeah.
But getting to hear his creative process and how he was more specifically just trying to identify with the character, and then he just happens to express himself through music, was one of my favorite answers that he gave in the whole interview. And one of the main reasons it's such a special interview.
I couldn't agree with him more, because like that, like, and he was talking about specifically those piano notes, those little piano notes in the Man of Steel score, because that score is it does get aggressive and loud, and Gabe is so right. Because the whole idea of following John Williams and trying to, not beat that score, but try and make your own score, but not try and emulate what Williams did. But like Gabe said, like it was like that journey of his mind into, okay, how you're so right. Cause like, it's like the feeling of that town of where they were living, and like that music, it speaks so perfectly to that feeling of what that place feels like. I mean, and it's so right. Gabe, you're 100% right on that. It was like a whole nother level of input into a piece of music that I already loved. It was almost like I knew I loved that piece of music, but I don't think I ever truly knew why. And then now, I loved it with the film and what Snyder did with it, obviously. But emotionally, I think now I feel so much deeper about it, knowing where it came from. It's like crazy to me.
Here's
and also,
another element.
Sorry, go ahead.
Another element that's so great with him is that none of his answers, I don't feel, were the standard Hollywood answer.
No.
Because when Kevin said you had to choose Dune over Tenet, how did that conversation go? And he goes, not great.
Not great.
That's all he needed to say, too. He didn't need to say anything else. I was like, oh, God.
It's the best,
It was
most
also cool
honest answer.
It was cool to hear him talk about John Williams, because I don't know why, but I just kind of assumed that two guys like that, this is such a negative way to look at it, but like might be in competition with each other.
Sure.
Always, you know. And to hear Hans Zimmer talk about Williams in such like a loving, like just like how we would talk about him, like a fan.
Yeah.
It was just kind of a reminder that like, okay, maybe I don't need to think of two people that do the same thing as in like you can appreciate someone else in the same way that like I love watching both of your interviews, and I love whenever you guys, and I don't think any of us watch each other's stuff in that way. So it's like it's a nice reminder that these two guys are probably fans of each other, and that was really refreshing for me.
We are the John Williams and Hans Zimmers of the world. It's definitely a good way to put it.
So tell me that you don't want like a documentary or a time machine somehow become a fly on the wall when he's telling this story about being head of music at DreamWorks.
Oh, yeah.
And John Williams' office is right down the hall, and you just want to go, wait. Can I just hang out in that? Can I just bring people coffee and just hear how that works? What an amazing moment.
But you would bring people, and as you're walking into John Williams' office, you'd be like,
You're like, oh, sorry.
oh, sorry.
Just stuck in my head. Right?
Also, that interview.
You can use that, John. You can use that if you want to.
That interview, though, it has changed a little bit the way I experience films. There's an answer he gives in the interview about the watching a film on screen versus watching it at home, right? And he talks about this idea of you as an audience looking through the frame in the beats of the music somehow. Yep. And I went and saw Belfast recently, and there's a lot of wide, beautiful shots with great depth of field, and I found myself thinking of what Zimmer was saying as I looked through the frame and as I looked through it was just so interesting. I had never thought about that before, because when you're watching at home, it's that screen, it's basically just one vision, you're looking right at it, it's all in your in that viewpoint. But when you're engrossed in a cinema and you have that peripheral is almost gone and it's just the screen, especially like on 143, like with Dune or something like that, it's like it's incredible how he explained that. I never thought about that before. So
I've read about editing and things like that countless times and studied it, and I had never thought of that. No. As an actual tool, as an actual an aspect of the film that you have to consider. Of the cut has to be longer, or you have to be longer between cuts on the sides of the screen because of the way your eye moves, which seems so obvious when he says it. You go, of course, you're always thinking about how the eye is moving in an image. Sure. But timing that to music and all of that was brilliant.
And another reason to check the interview out on YouTube for the visual aspect is to just see his visceral reaction when we mention HBO Max. And how upset he is that Dune is even available there. He's horrified.
Yeah.
Also, the comment he said at the end of the interview we all got off the interview, and I was gonna make a joke, but we all got off the interview and we were emotional. Emotionally, and we were like, oh my god, like what he just said was like it was unbelievable. I couldn't believe that he took the time to even say that, and the way he said it, it was just like
the callback was great too.
It was
Show Friends.
Oh yeah, the
Show Friends.
Show Friends.
We should change our name to Show Friends, honestly. There's no other reason not to call the show Friends.
Show Friends.
Show Friends. Change it after 200.
That's the little like tagline. That's like the subheader under what does he call us? Real Talk?
Real Talk.
We're called Real Talk.
Real Talk.
The home of Show Friends is like our little tagline.
That's great. All right, so that's Hans Zimmer. Hans Zimmer, friend of the show.
We get to phone it in the rest of the year.
Gabe. Yes, please, go ahead.
No, as we're signing off, I want to let people just on a tease for what's coming in a couple days.
Yes.
The main show. This is a bonus episode this week. I mean, the bonus episode of all bonus episodes.
Yes, true.
And additionally, we are giving them an interview with Sir Kenneth Branagh, dropping with the main show on Friday. So if you're still here listening to us gush, I assume you're going to be excited about that one. And it is fantastic. We actually just wrapped on it, and I can confirm it is amazing.
Do you know who's listening right now? The real ones. The real ones are listening right now.
The real ones are listening right now.
They've made it this far.
I do want to say it's important because I feel like this type of interview could go out and people could find it who don't know our show, right? And then they listen to it. So
Hopefully.
if you are continuing and you are still in this part of the interview, if you've never heard us before, please find our catalog of directors. We've had Christopher Nolan, we've had Denis Villeneuve, we've had the Russo brothers, we've had, Alfonso Cuarón. We're talking like Edward Norton, Joaquin Phoenix, Patty Jenkins. Just, if you're a fan of filmmaking and you found us through just because being a Zimmer fan, we've been doing the show for a few years now, and the catalog is pretty insane. It's all geeky stuff. And if you're a composer fan, we got Giacchino, talked to Elfman, Ludwig. Oh my God, Göransson for who won the Oscar for Black Panther and actually did Tenet recently. So cool catalog if you haven't heard us before. So
It's not too bad. It's not too
Yeah.
bad. And growing. So
And we've got some bangers coming through the rest of the year. So
yes, we
Yeah.
do.
stay tuned.
Yes, we do. So if you're on the YouTube, hit like and subscribe. If you're listening to us where you get your podcast needs met, hit subscribe as well too. And we'll be back soon. Talk to you later.
Zimmer.
I was like, what do we shout for a bonus episode?